All right, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Colts Bros podcast. I'm your host, Grant Sinning, and tonight I have with me, as always, the other Colts Bros, Alex Jacobson and Garrett Stallings. How are you gentlemen this evening?
Pretty good. My arm's just a little sore from throwing these super weighted footballs around the backyard.
No, they're not footballs.
They're not footballs.
They're just heavy balls.
Yeah, just heavy balls. We don't know the shape.
Yeah, are they football shaped? I think that's the question.
They feel like they should be, right? Or are they medicine balls? Are they soft, hard? How does he grip them?
Honestly, I just assume they're Doug Peterson's from the Super Bowl. That's been my guess this entire time, but I don't know. But yes, that's kind of been the biggest news, I guess, since we talked last week. Is just more and more information has come out about Andrew Luck. Apparently, he's throwing big, heavy balls. But he's not throwing a football. He's throwing things that are heavier than a football, which is... I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good regardless. And if you watch anything from the live town hall event hosted by Peter King, which was just bizarre, he looks strong in his shoulders, like he looks even, unlike he did last year. So kind of encouraging.
Yeah, so, maybe he was just bullying and he's really bad at it. He just has no idea.
Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, did you guys watch any of that town hall event?
No.
Nah.
Okay. Well, first of all, you should at least watch Frank Reich and the assistant coaches. That's like 30 minutes total time. And Ballard's is good. I could just listen to Ballard talk all day. But anyways, it's hosted by Peter King, and he's just the weirdest dude ever. Like he starts out like he's got 20 minutes of allotted time. That's what I've taken because Ballard had 20 minutes. Reich had 20 minutes, the assistant coaches had 10, the players had 10. And in this 20 minutes, he spends like 4 or 5 minutes telling the story about, in 1985 when Reich led the Bills comeback, about how he was the last person in the locker room. It was just him and Reich, and then his wife comes in and he talks about this long story about them doing all this. And it literally had nothing to do with it. And Reich was just like, thanks for that, Peter. It's a good story. And it was just like, man, like... And the rest of the whole thing was just kind of like that. Like, there was this really awkward moment where he's like, John Simon, I just got to ask, you're super tatted up. What's your favorite tattoo? Like, in front of like an auditorium filled with people. It's just like, what the hell? I mean, it was just completely bizarre. And John's like, well, I really like all of them. And he's like, no, seriously, which one's your favorite? And it was just like...
I have to know.
It was just bizarre. And it's just
Are they Horcruxes? Secret?
The weirdest thing for me about the entire situation was, why is Peter King doing this?
Why is he?
I don't know.
This was sponsored by the team.
Yeah, no, it was the second annual Colts Town Hall event that they do for season ticket holders.
Well, he still lead whatever at Sports Illustrated, so Monday Morning QB and everything. He's always been so weird, man. He's only 60. I had to look up his age because I was thinking, oh, maybe he's 85 or something, and that explains his behavior. No, he's 60. He should be very coherent, but he's not. Yeah, he was the guy back when, not Prince, but somebody died. And he tweeted, like, I was in the restaurant, and I told the waiter that... Was it Michael Jackson?
No, I think it was Robin Williams.
It was Robin Williams, yeah. I told the waiter Robin Williams died. I thought he'd cry.
Yeah, just bizarre. Now, I know you guys don't listen to him, but the Pardon My Take podcast, they have a segment on there called Peter King Eats the Trash. And they just talk about his tweets and stuff. It's quite hilarious. But anyways... It was just a weird. I don't know why. But the town hall, great listening. You could listen to Reich talk about the offense. You can listen to it's Eberflus. So
yes.
And Sirianni, but you can listen to them talk for 2-3 minutes each, or maybe a minute as Peter King talks for 5 in the 10-minute clip. So that's also. I mean, I guess all of those hires are technically official now. The one I'm most excited about, Rusty Jones. First of all, a strength and conditioning coach named Rusty is awesome. Yeah. But he's like one of the pioneers of sports science nutrition and all that kind of stuff for football, which I think is cool. So I'm excited to see if that has any bearing on the seemingly Colts injury bug that we've had over the last few years. But anyways, so we're going to get into tonight, 2018 linebackers. Now, this is the week before the Combine. Our rankings, our thoughts, subject to change a little bit based on athleticism. Not entirely too much, but we will see kind of where we land. Interesting class, guys. I mean, I think that there's guys for all three spots that are going to be available in the first 2 rounds that are fairly good. The first 2 days, I watched some guys that are probably round 3 guys. But first, before we get into this class, let's make sure that we're all on the same page with the 3 defensive linebackers in a 43 scheme. Are you guys comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, let's talk about it for just a second. Start with the mic. Alex, I know one of your favorite prospects ever, Deion Jones, is Mike. And this is kind of defense that I think we're trying to build is something very fast like this. So talk about the responsibilities of a Mike and a defensive attack, kind of like we're going to put together.
Yeah, so your linebackers really, the easiest way to think about them is in run responsibilities, and that the Mike is your middle linebacker. It is, in this 4-3 scheme, it is, you see body types that are completely different in that you have a guy like Deion Jones who is becoming a superstar in the league and I'm not sure what he's at now, but he went at the Senior Bowl at like 209 pounds. He's tiny and quick. While some other guys are like Luke Kuechly, Brian Urlacher, bigger guys, Ray Lewis, just these big inside guys. And so the responsibilities of the Mike are essentially you're involved in a lot of plays because inherently by being in the middle of the run defense, you're going to either be run at or run near. And so you're going to be responsible for containing, if it's, let's say you're running to the right side and the Mike is in the middle, you're going to be responsible for attacking the gap. If you're doing something with your left outside linebacker, then you're going to have to do backside contain. It's basically you're looking for a player who is strong enough to take on blocks, should be a excellent tackler, but is going to be in the right position most of the time because it's the 2 things that are most devastating for linebackers, like the biggest mistakes you can make are to give up backside contain and to over pursue, and those are 2 responsibilities of the Mike. Really, of all linebackers can really be seen in the same light, in the fact that, at least when it comes to run responsibilities, and the fact that if you're run at, you need to stay sound, stay strong, and really just fill up gaps. And if you're run against and you're run the opposite way, you need to contain on the backside, because the biggest runs in football are always when the outside contain falls apart.
Okay, now we'll talk about the Sam linebacker. Garrett, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, well, the Sam and the Will are basically different from the Mike, and just that their responsibilities are kind of obviously more to the edge, but they're also, because the Sam refers to the strong side linebacker, he's typically considered to be a larger, more physical player because he'll usually have to take on blocks more directly, deal with tight ends and coverage as well, whereas a Will is usually the athlete, the faster in-space player. I guess in this class, an example would be maybe Rashaan Evans. Would you guys consider him more of a Will with his size?
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I think he's a Sam, but that's me.
Oh, really? Okay, I think he's a little small to be. I mean, maybe 240 sub-pound guy. But yeah, you get the point. The Will is usually the smaller, the faster guy. It can vary depending on what kind of defense or philosophy that you're playing with, but you won't see as many blocks from linemen as the other 2, just because he's not playing across from on the other side of the formation with the tight end. So yeah, weak side, strong side, big guy, little guy.
Yeah, I think another thing with the Sam linebacker that's important to kind of distinguish from the other two, he is going to be more of the guy that you might ask to pass rush more often than the other two, just because of what it is with the tight end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who really like. I'm not a blitz heavy guy, so I'm in 4-man pressure when I can. But that is, if you're ever gonna like rush somebody, you could drop down your Sam. It's in a 4-3. So in the 3-4, like the Colts had last year or 2 years ago, they had Eric Walden, who's a great example of this. He played Sam in their strong side linebacker, and he would drop down the pass rush fairly often, but that's just the nature of the scheme. But in a 4-3, you're going to have much less of that. But I think if it's going to come, it's certainly going to come from the Sam.
Right. But this will be interesting because Cowboys last year, and remember, Eberflus was the linebacker coach and passing game coordinator, I think, whatever. They did a lot of disguised blitzes with their linebackers, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works. But it helps when you've got some athletic guy like the kid from Notre Dame, and for some reason his name completely escapes me now. He was injured. What's his name? Jalen Smith?
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, very athletic. Still not 100% to where he was, but you can do a lot of disguised blitz with your will coming off the weak side. Very exciting. I love the 43 defense, especially the way that they've been using this man cover 3 over the past few years. I think it's just fascinating what you can do with some of the your linebackers are so athletic that you can do disguise type stuff where you could maybe send your linebacker with the slot wide receiver and send your, you know what I mean? You can send your cornerback to blitz and don't have to worry about the slot, this fast guy or whatever, getting out of position or whatever towards your linebacker. So it's very, very fun. So let's talk about
really quick, just a correction I made. I said that Mike linebackers are often responsible for weak side contain, and that was, or backside contain, and that's something I was thinking about with Dion in my head because that's something Dion excelled at. But that's actually not usually responsibility of Mike. That is an outside thing because even if you're running far away from the Mike, you're still going to have that outside guy on gap contain. So mainly a Mike should be for playing the inside the tackle box and hitting gaps hard.
Yeah, that Will is more of that.
It's guy. Both. Yeah, it's Will that can chase him down with speed, and Sam that in the strong side run can just clog up a lane.
All right, so let's get into these guys. I think we should start off with probably the top guy, in my opinion, the top guy, Roquan Smith from Georgia. Do you guys have anybody else out of the guys you've watched that you would say are better than Roquan Smith?
No.
Yeah, I'm really high on a lot of these guys, which I was surprised by, but I will say that I like Roquan more than Reuben Foster from last year. I think he, right now, is... I've been watching linebackers and really draft prospects closely since about 2015, 2014, and he's the best linebacker prospect I've seen.
He's absolutely insane. So let's talk about him. I mean, okay, so Alex, we'll start with you. What about his game? Like, kind of break his game down. Like, what does he excel at? What is he kind of weak in?
Yeah, so he is a guy who I'll get the weaknesses out of the way first because I just think they're interesting. Is that he looks big on tape, but he actually is measured in a little small. He's like 6'1", he's 225. So hypothetically, and in the NFL, when you get bigger players, that could lead to some potential concerns, although those are not concerns I really have. Then I think the only thing that I've seen from him is that when he takes on contact, when he's trying to get off of blocks, he can sometimes be a little slow to come off them. Technique is a little inconsistent, but that's really it. As far as strengths, it's they're just so strong in every area. His discipline in the run game, I've tweeted out a few GIFs, and I'll tweet out a few more. Just the discipline to always hit the gap right, never over pursue. He is a fundamentally sound player in the most important aspects of the game as a linebacker, which is to be in the right position at the right time. He does that better than anybody in this class, and as well as anybody I've seen since Dion. And then he is really athletic too, which is again kind of in that Dion mold, in the fact that he moves all over the field. He's got incredible burst downfield, but unlike Dion, he is a strong tackler and a hard tackler. He makes highlight plays one after another in space. You can throw an outside pass and he'll come and just demolish the guy. He's really great to see there. And then coverage, it's not anything particularly special, but I think he's strong, and his athleticism helps him stay with people in man coverage, and then in zone he's solid. But you're taking him high because of what he can do for your run defense.
Okay, so last year you and I did a hour-long episode of either this podcast or the Draft Any podcast. It was me and you, and we talked about linebackers, and we talked about Duke Riley. Okay, so one of the things, Roquan's biggest knock against him is with the size and his quote-unquote ability to get off blocks. Now, you and I talked last year, the difference between, Duke Riley, Deion Jones, fairly similar size, fairly similar traits. The difference was if a blocker got his hand on Duke Riley, the play was over. He would get washed out completely. Roquan Smith does not have that whatsoever, and that was the distinguishing thing between Duke Riley and Deion Jones, because Deion Jones is a small guy too.
Yeah, Deion Jones is tiny.
I don't see anything with Roquan Smith's game that would concern me, because he's just so athletic. He's able to get off blocks like Deion Jones.
Right, and Deion did that with technique first and foremost, and Roquan, I think, needs to get a little better at that, but Roquan is incredibly strong, and that is awesome to see. And then I think, again, the difference with Riley was somebody I did not like, who a lot of people, like you said, he has a lot of the same athletic, physical traits as Deion, so a lot of people compared him to him. They went to the same school, they played together, but I saw they were nowhere near the same player, and a lot of that is, again, due to Duke Riley's just fundamental weakness, and the fact that he is not in the right position at the right time way too often, and that, I think, is what it all boils down to, and Roquan does that incredibly well. I also forgot to mention, he, as a blitzer, he's awesome to watch as a blitzer, and his diagnosis time, he can find plays and understand plays in a snap second, and he will react most of the time in about the ideal way. So we'll talk about this in a second, I'm sure, but he is somebody who I think you could, even though linebackers are a generally devalued position, and the fact that they're not as important to a defense in a passing league, and that there are a lot of guys, the difference between the top linebackers and the average linebackers is not that big, but he is a guy who I think you could be comfortable taking high, because he comes with very little, actually no off-the-field concerns in terms of injury or character, and is just such a good player in every facet.
Garrett,
he's banned. Alex is right. Everybody's right. I don't think there's any real, even in what many people consider to be one of the best linebacker classes we've seen in the last few years. Roquan's pretty much the consensus number one guy, because he's Bane. He's really strong and scary, and the size might be concerning, but the athleticism and the strength pretty much makes up for that, especially since it's the modern NFL. We're not quite as concerned about size as we might have once been. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to add to that.
Do you know, I'll give you guys, my comp for him was not Deion Jones. My comp for him was Thomas Davis.
I've heard Patrick Willis.
Oh, I think Patrick Willis is probably heavier. Probably had 20 pounds on him. Thomas Davis is 6'1", 430 or 430, 230, 235. So
Willis is actually a pretty small guy. I can see that.
He's short.
Yeah. He's thicker. He's bulkier, but
Roquan was 6'1" or something.
Yeah, he's 6'1".
He's 6'1", 225. Yeah, Patrick Willis was 6'1", 240. So yeah, he's bigger.
I don't think I'm not really one to compare because I'm not really good at them. I can't seem to get creative enough to come up with them. But I don't think Roquan is quite the player in coverage that Thomas Davis is. But against the run, I think they're very similar.
All right. Okay, so for some reason, the Colts don't take Bradley Chubb at 3 or trade back, and they take Roquan. Are we mad?
Now, how far did we trade back?
No, I'm saying we didn't trade back.
We didn't trade back.
Oh.
Nah, it's a lot. I mean, a linebacker at 3 is not ideal, frankly. There are only a couple positions that you can really justify drafting at 3, and that's not one of them.
Okay, so hypothetical trade back with the Jets to 6.
We're getting better.
Yeah,
I think that's about the place where I'd be comfortable.
I think
that's about the line. Yeah,
I think he goes. If he doesn't go top 10 to someone, he goes to 10 with Oakland, and they run to the front of the podium. You know what I mean? It's a run to the podium type situation for them because they need it. So in our defense, are we talking him as a Mike or as a Will, or does it matter?
Oh, I want him as Mike. I want him as Mike.
Yeah, he's the centerpiece. Especially if you're drafting a linebacker that high, you want to probably draft Mike.
All right. Moving on. Who do you guys want to talk about next? Because I know Alex has got takes about somebody.
I know you guys have a pretty significant disagreement in your rankings, from what I remember, right, regarding one Tremaine Edwards.
Edmonds.
I
kept calling it Edwards too. I'm trying to make sure every time I hear Edwards it's not right. All right, let's just talk about him. Tremaine Edmonds, Virginia Tech linebacker, 6'5", 250. 19 years old. He'll be 19 on draft day. He won't be. I think he turns 20 in either May or June. So
Edward Gorlick, who makes a lot of really great linebacker analytical content. If you guys want to check him out on Twitter at Edward Gorlick, he said that he's I think he's the youngest linebacker to be drafted since 2008 or something.
That's wow. Since 2000, who was it in 2008? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Oh, is he the guy that's got the that graph, like the breakout age and college tackle skills performance guy?
He talks about some of that stuff. I don't know if he's the only one who does.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. He's got an XY graph.
Let's plug the at. What's the at?
At Edward Gorlick, Gorelick.
Yeah, he makes a lot of good content. Check him out.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
There are a lot, and he has pointed out this is a really strong class. Just if you look at the kind of tackle numbers that all these prospects have relative to their age, because youth and production are pretty predictive factors when combined together like that. So just based on that, this is a pretty impressive class, and that's what other people are finding too. Now that we're in the season where we're starting to investigate the tape a little bit more heavily.
Yeah,
so it's exciting.
I'll get to specifics later, but this is one of the best linebacker classes that I've watched. I think I might. It's this against 2016, which had Miles Jack and Deion Jones and Reggie Ragland and Jalen Smith, but I think this might be stronger. It's just because it's especially at the top. Like these top 3 guys are all really impressive.
No,
these top 3 guys.
Yeah, I have a different top 3 than a lot of people, but we haven't
decided that.
Okay, so let's just go in. Let's continue talking about Tremaine. Okay, so let's start out this conversation with this in mind. I think that this is a guy, and Alex, I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree. Again, he's 19. His stock is entirely dependent upon projection to the next level because he's so young, and frankly, he's still growing. He's still like maturing as a human being, like body wise. So I think a lot of this stuff is a lot to do with. I think his stock is so high because of projection and those splash plays that you do see in his tape. as opposed to like, oh my gosh, this guy is so fundamentally sound here and this and this and that. It's just the fact that this dude is 6'5", 250, has arms. I'm excited to see what his arms measure at. I would imagine they're 39-inch arms.
That's my favorite part of the combine, honestly, is the arm measurements. I get so excited.
Yes. So I think that's where
I agree.
Go ahead.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think the athleticism is one thing you don't have to project because it's clearly there. The size is. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 240, he's ridiculous size, and those arms are gonna generate a whole lot of buzz. But I do think that it's entirely projection, and I think your opinion on him is based on how high you think that ceiling is, what you think you can get from him in a after one summer, and then I guess how likely you think he is to reach something close to a ceiling.
So let's talk about it now. You broke down Roquan, so let's go. Garrett, did you watch Edmonds? Garrett? Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized my mic was off for some reason. Okay. Yeah, I watched 3 games of it. So I was answering your question, and then I was wondering why you were interrupting me. So sorry.
I'm just rude.
Yeah, I watched Edmonds. I think I watched 3 games of him. Yeah, the athleticism is there. One thing, just the philosophy of evaluating linebackers, I think the way we value athleticism is a little different, because I'm usually inclined to favor athletic players. I just enjoy watching them more, so I'm biased. But with linebacker, I don't think the numbers really support that athleticism gives you the same kind of advantage that it does at other positions in the NFL.
And which matches like the philosophy of the position and like the role of the position. There's a whole thing about linebackers and the fact that you want to play slow, because if you overplay and you play too fast, you're going to miss stuff and you're going to over pursue stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything else in the NFL is about being fast and active and moving around as quickly as possible. Linebacker is completely about positioning, just being in the right place and not going too far or not far enough. So because of that, I'm a little bit hesitant to project Edmonds the way I would if he were a similarly gifted athlete at another position, because I'm not sure that if that comes through for him, it'll solve the problems that he does have on tape. Okay. That being said, because he's so young, it's also fair that we would see some of these problems. But that also doesn't guarantee that he'll overcome them.
He's also a first-year starter.
Right, which is, just a weird thing to do. I mean, was Hooker a first-year starter? He was,
yes.
Right?
He was, yep.
He was.
Yeah. But he had that insane season.
Yeah, and Quincy Wilson was as well, I believe.
I don't think so. I think he started as a sophomore, as I recall. I don't remember. But yeah, obviously very young players.
So, I think, for me, I do see a lot of that over-pursue, overflow, maybe being in the wrong gap, not diagnosing correctly. But then you see these plays where he gets it all right, and when he gets it all right, it's something different. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, holy crap, here's this 6'5", 250 guy with 30, 40-inch arms, whatever they happen to be, making this ridiculous play. Like, there's plays that he can make that no one else in the entire world can make because he's so long. And I think for me, it's projection, but at the same time, you see the pieces there to do it. He's got to have a really good coach to get the most out of him, especially being 19, 20 years old. Now, Alex, I know you've got some varying thoughts on him, so let's hear your take.
So I want to just echo everything Garrett said, in the fact that linebacker is the one position that really is going against the entire everything we are learning about the NFL, and the fact that athleticism, I guess linebacker and quarterback, and the fact that athleticism and movement skills is what matters the most. In linebacker, it's about positioning and the correct type of movement as opposed to just moving the fastest. when it comes to a guy like Edmonds, I'm inclined not to favor the athleticism as much in order to overcome what serious flaws I see on tape. And for me, it's just the fact that too often you see the guy has no idea what he's doing. And I don't blame him, considering he's 19, he's a first-year starter, and I think his best days are ahead of him, I have no doubt. But I just think at the position he's at, with the guys in this class, I don't understand putting him in top. I mean, I guess I do understand because it's the projection, it's the upside play, but I couldn't bring myself to do that because to me, I'm not comfortable taking him day 1 or 2 just because the guy shows no skills of a linebacker way too often. His plays that he makes are awesome, but they're too often just getting into the backfield or making a really nice play in coverage or just exploding off the line of scrimmage, which is impressive and certainly a highlight play, but I just don't think they're what translates. And like he hasn't made, like, even moving backwards, like moving laterally for the guy, moving backwards, he just looks awkward to me. And that's something you wouldn't expect necessarily for a guy who has the athletic profile he does. I'm very interested to see what he tests, because if it's great, that's what we expect. If I would need something like next level, otherworldly, for me to consider him probably even a day 2. I just don't see linebacker skills for him. Maybe he could. I hate to do this after what we've been reading about Lamar, but maybe he can move to a different defensive position. Maybe he could try to use that athleticism and just go forward as an edge rusher. I don't know, but I just don't see linebacker in his future at a high level.
I've actually seen, I think, Justice Mosqueda talk about what if you moved him to edge rusher.
See, I know what I'm talking about.
So, but he also said, has that ever been done before?
Okay, just look, you want to be careful about using Injustice as an endorsement.
Oh,
no,
Alex. That's for sure. But anyways, okay, so Alex, you said, did I hear you say you wouldn't take him day 1 or day 2, so you're not taking him in the first 3 rounds at all?
That's based on what I've seen, no.
Oh.
That's a little much.
First hot take tonight.
That's a little much for me, even though I think we agree fundamentally. I would take him later on day 2, I think, depending on how he tests.
I personally don't see the top 15 love that he's getting.
I've seen like number 4 on a big board. I've
seen that's crazy.
Oh, I've seen it too. I mean, you even go to like NFL.com and you pull up players by their grade, and he is number 3. It goes their list. I can pull it up real quick. Saquon Barkley, Quentin Nelson, Tremaine Edwards, Bradley Chubb, Sam Darnold. So that's Lance Zierlein's top 5.
For the record, Lance Zierlein, in a scouting report I read over Rashaan Evans, which we'll talk about later, cited his quick diagnosis skills as a strength, but then worried about his being a beat behind in diagnosing plays. So that's what we're working with in the NFL.com.
That's what you're working with on all of these things. Hey, we need you to write 300 blurbs about a player. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
right.
It's pretty silly.
It's
NFL 1000.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to finish my thought there. I'm more comfortable with him in the later half of the first round. And it entirely depends on how you feel about how well you can coach him to that next level.
I was trying to think, is there anybody he's comparable to in these past few draft classes who, because like,
no.
I'm sure people might want to talk about Myles Jack and
no,
everybody,
no.
But Myles Jack knew what he was doing as a linebacker. He wasn't just athleticism. That's why I was so high on him. It's because he knew what he was doing as a linebacker in addition to being that freak athlete. I just don't think there's anybody close to what Evans is, and it's interesting to see because that's a new case study we're going to have. So I'm very interested to see how that develops.
The quote I remember seeing, and it could have been on that NFL page, I think it was something I saw on Twitter, something. Good luck coming up with a comp for him, etc., etc. You're better off comping him to a basketball player, which is like, that's actually probably not a good thing.
No.
But anyways, we'll move on to our next subject. Who you guys want to talk about next?
How about Rashawn?
All right, let's talk about Rashawn Evans, Alabama linebacker, 6'3", 234. So this is a guy that a lot of people like that I don't.
Really?
Well, okay. In the world of takes, I would have to say no, I don't like him. But in the reality world, he's a second-round player.
Okay.
So that you know what I mean? In the world of takes,
Yeah,
I gotta like this
makes
guy,
sense.
but I have to hate this one. So he's always gonna be on the side of I hate this guy. But I don't. I just don't think that the first round love is there, just like you guys talk about with Jermaine. For me, what I see with Rashawn is a guy who is he's in this weird position in the Alabama defense where they wanted him to play edge and linebacker. And he did okay, but he wasn't great at either. He can definitely go through the motions. He's good at. I feel like he's fairly good at diagnosing where the ball is going to be. I don't think that he's very good at creating a path to the ball. If that makes any sense. He knows where it's going, but he can't get through. He can't
working through contact.
My biggest thing with the guy is I just don't think he can freaking tackle worth a lick. I watched 3 games, and the first 2 games in a row, he was missing tackle after tackle. I'm talking where he had a guy wrapped up, and he just escapes from him, and little guys would hit him and then just drag him around, and I mean, it was just like, I just don't think that this guy has that power part of the game, and for me, that's why I really have a big knock on him, is I just don't feel like he's the greatest tackler, plus the fact that he can't seem to navigate, in my mind, he can't seem to navigate through the trash to get to where he needs to be.
Grant, I'm glad you said that, just because I turned on, I think, 2 games, and I just was surprised by how poor of a tackler he consistently was, and I was like, am I just watching bad games? But I don't think I am.
No, that's who he is. I mean, that's I mean, like there's a lot of good things to his game. I think he's very the coach speak term. He's multiple, right? You know, he's good at aspects of pass rushing. He's got some pass rush moves. He's good at some of those aspects of the linebacking thing, but when it comes down to it, he just can't tackle. And when you need like the number 1 criteria in my book for linebackers is, can they tackle? And he can't. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that is number 1 weakness for me is his tackling. That's not the number 1 criteria for a linebacker for me. As I've said, it's positioning, but and ability to get to your spot. But I think that is certainly an important part of playing linebacker, is actually being able to finish a play. And this is not only in just tackling runners. He's just he will get a free line to the quarterback, or he'll even win a pass rush battle, because he's pretty good at that for a linebacker. He's certainly pretty good at edge rushing, and he will just miss the sack. And that is something that pressure, as we've seen, the pressures don't really translate as much when compared to sacks, and the fact that sacks are what matters and tackles are what matters, and missed tackles and missed sacks can be devastating for defenses. He was a guy who yesterday, when I really got into him, I became disappointed in him, and I was disappointed in him as a prospect. As I've thought about him more throughout today, I've grown higher, so we'll see where I land. Because I think he does a lot well. I think he's a tick slow. After what Lance said, I'm going to lean that he's a tick slow diagnosing plays.
I think he false steps. I think he sees what's happening, but he's a little
that could be it too. I think he's just an inefficient mover, which is a really which is back to his main negative for me, which is the fact that I don't think he's very good at that strength I said, that positioning thing, which I think is really important. Where he does excel, though, is which is kind of ironic given his struggles tackling, is the physical side of the game. He is potentially second to none in this class in the way he takes on blocks and he gets off blocks and he hits people. And he can get himself free. Even if he's taking inefficient steps, he can get off blocks and mess up the play enough to cause some disruption. And then if he's blitzing, he's an excellent blitzer because he's athletic and can get a great first step, and then just can demolish the blocking running back. It's really nice to see. I'm interested to see how he tests. If he tests well, I think you can put him at will. I think you can put him at will regardless if he tests well, to be honest. But I'd like to see him test well to compensate for some of those deficiencies in positioning and as a tackler. And then in coverage, I thought he was decent. Coverage matters not. Coverage is secondary for linebackers. So he was okay when he did cover, but most of his third down responsibilities were rushing the passer, which certainly adds value to his game. I'm not sure how much you can ask him to do in the league, but it's certainly not a negative. He did it fairly well for a guy being asked to rush the passer. He's a base linebacker. He beat some college left tackles.
As an undersized linebacker.
He was supposed to be an edge guy. Like, that's what he started the year as. That's what he came in? That's what his position was, but Alabama went through so many injuries this year that he was we need you to play linebacker.
That's not an uncommon
it's not.
From high school.
But I mean, even at the beginning of the year, that he was like the third string, or not third, second. What Alabama's ridiculous, regardless.
Yeah,
he was not the starting edge. The two edge went down the first 2 weeks, stepped up there. Then the linebackers came in. They're like, okay, we need you to move here. We have this other 5-star recruit who's going to play edge. So, I think one of my biggest concerns watching the tape is, how is he going to play without these monster defensive linemen playing in front of him? I think that's a legitimate concern.
I think that's it's not just that he has, that's not just an Alabama thing where you're wondering if they're going to struggle without the system around them and the players around them. It's the fact that his game is really reliant on, because he struggles to get positioning and to move effectively, he needs really stout defensive linemen who can slow these blockers down and let him get to the ball and get to his gap. So I think that's something that will be important for him in the league, is that he gets to a good defensive line, and I doubt it's going to be, certainly not going to be any better relative to competition than Alabama's is. So I think that's definitely a legit concern.
All right. Yeah, good. All right, let's move on to another guy. Who's next? You guys watch. Who'd you guys watch?
I'll get to. Okay, I'm gonna butcher this. Leighton Vander Esch, Boise State. So
the most white name literally ever.
No, it's impressive.
It's impressively. He's not. Okay, which is a whiter name from a player from Utah? Kyler Fackrell or Leighton Vander Esch?
I think Kyler has got to win every
Kyler that's a special kind of white boy.
That's a special. RIPJ's takes on Kyler Fackrell too.
I have not seen a player more berated on Twitter by certain team's Twitter than Kyler Fackrell. I don't know what he did to the Packers, but it's ridiculous.
If his name had just been Kyle, they would have left him alone.
What could have been? Okay, but so Leighton Vander Esch is my second linebacker in this class. I think he is closer to Roquan than he is to number 3. I think this guy is an exceptional player. I came in not expecting much because he's a white linebacker, went to Boise State and played on a blue field and has that name. But what I saw was just somebody who is fundamentally not only solid but really good in pretty much every area. Mm-hmm. He is the best coverage linebacker I've seen in this class so far, by far. He was asked to drop in his own coverage a lot, and he was always right in position. He reacted well to what he saw in front of him. He felt stuff behind him. if you throw a flat to him, he was always taking good angles to the ball. And then a man coverage, you didn't see as much of that, but again, it's not exceptional, but it's solid. And then as a run defender, he's not overly strong. He's going to test well, I think, but he's not like jaw dropping off the speed or doesn't jump off the film as a particularly athletic guy, but he's solid and he's sound and he's consistently sound in the ways that the guys I've loved in drafts previously have been. He is normal sized. He's average in a lot of ways physically, except I think he is going to test well. But just when you look at him, you don't see this guy. But what you see when you watch the tape is somebody who I think is top in the class when it comes to coverage and is competing for it when it comes to run responsibilities. Finishing's okay. He's not going to give you much as a blitzer, but I think that combination, he's not like the dynamic player I think that Roquan is, which puts him behind him. But I think he is being, I don't know what Twitter thinks of him because I have not been in draft Twitter much so far, but I think he is fantastic. I would not bat an eye on spending a top 15 selection on him.
Oh. I'm trying to find his age. You didn't watch him, did you, Garrett?
I have not. I got on the podcast. I don't think you were here. You were doing something with your mic, and Alex told me, "Yeah, man, you hear about Van Der Esch?" And I said, "Wow, I've never been there before."
Okay, so I really liked watching Van Der Esch. Like, the one thing about his tape for me is that he is solid. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the number one word for him is solid.
Which I think is interesting because a lot of people, that is often used as like kind of a backhanded compliment. If you call somebody solid, they're good, but they're not like great. But for him, and especially for his position, that's what's important, and he is just phenomenal at that.
Yeah,
I think solid is a higher compliment when you apply it to a linebacker or maybe a lineman.
Yeah.
Makes you feel safe.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm very interested in his testing, because he's 6'3", 240.
He's a natural mover, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think he's got that gallop to him, like that stride. Okay, so when you talk about what does Draft Twitter think? Draft Twitter, solid, but my thing with a lot of draft Twitter sometimes is they always make these giant assumptions. They're like, look at what happens when he blitzes, and like it'll be him running into a linebacker or him running into, or not a linebacker, but a lineman or the running back. That was never really his. That's not what they asked him to do in that defense. He's not good at it. But here's I think maybe a comp for him. I'm gonna give him maybe. Brian Urlacher. And it's not because they're white, but it's because they asked Brian Urlacher in that Bears defense to stand in the middle of the field and make the plays in coverage if they needed to be made, or come up and attack through the gaps and make the plays. They asked him to read and react as opposed to attack, and I think that's what Leighton is really good at. And again, that's it's so not funny. Because they're white.
Alex mentioned that comparison right before the pod, and I said, "Oh, because he's white."
Oh, see, again, I wasn't there, so wasn't on the call at that moment. But I mean, I think that's a fair comparison. Do you not agree, Alex?
I mean, I struggle to compare people to Hall of Fame players, but I know that's not what you're doing. Just in terms of his role and as the type of player I think he could be, right? And I think that's fair. I hope people don't misuse him because that's what he should be. He should be that. I think he should be your mic. He should be your signal caller. I think he should just let plays come to him and play them correct physically and positionally, and not try to do too much, because if you do, you're going to have a much better defense in every way.
No, I agree. He's a very solid player. He's one of those guys that when I watched him at first and I looked at I looked for the hype, I'm like, this guy could be here in the second round. I don't think.
I think he could. He might be able. I mean, he's not going to get anybody excited, I don't think. except for me, I guess. But
unless he tests like an all-star, you know what I mean, like an all-pro, but I don't think he will.
He is in that I'm thinking of comparisons to him, and I think Dion might not be the worst in the world because I see the same things I saw in both of them, and the fact that they're just these strong positional players.
Wait.
Although Dion had a little more playmaking in him.
Can you comp white and black players? I don't think that's how that works.
I suppose that's against the rules.
That's against the rules of comping players, I think. Yeah. Anyway, Leighton Vander Esch, good player. Next guy on the list. You guys talked about Jerome Baker. I did not, so I'll sit back and listen. You guys can sell me on him or not.
Yeah. Jerome came out as a redshirt sophomore, I believe, from Ohio State. Or wait, maybe not. I might be getting that wrong. Regardless, Jerome is a speedy linebacker. He's undersized. So at Ohio State last year, the linebacker struggled a lot. A lot of that was due to Chris Worley, who is another draft prospect who is terrible. So don't bother watching him. But Jerome is 6'1", about 220, 225, and he is in the mold of Darren Lee from Ohio State a few years ago, where he's just an athletic playmaker, and he makes a lot of mistakes, but not in the same type of mistakes as a guy like Tremaine Edwards, in the fact that he knows what he's doing. He just sometimes will read plays the wrong way, if that makes any sense. But I've been a big fan of him for a while. He didn't really play much until recently. He struggle to get on the field when there were these top guys ahead of him. But since then, he's been a really solid player. I don't think he's spectacular. He's athletic, but not athletic enough to really constitute him as like a freak athlete or anything. But he's a good player. Day 2 guy.
Garrett, anything else to comment on?
Yeah, he's basically agree with that from what relatively little I've seen compared to Alex Baker. One of those little, you call him, I guess, a missile guys because he shares the mass and velocity of a missile. I guess he would be about Telvin Smith's size then?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's probably the higher end comparison, or at least the hopeful comparison for a player like him.
He's really bad at coverage. That's just another thing I'll add.
Isn't Telvin Smith also really stupid in coverage, though?
Yeah, I believe so.
So there you go. I don't actually. Did Darren Lee work out? And Raekwon, for that matter? I haven't followed up on the linebacker.
Raekwon, I believe, was hurt. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he was hurt. He went to the Saints, did he not?
Yeah, Raekwon went to the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think he was hurt.
Okay. And Lee is still with the Jets.
He's still with the Jets, not doing too much, but...
Okay, yeah. And then Shazier is out. So we don't really know. That whole generation of Ohio State linebackers has been lost to time. What a shame. Okay. Yeah. Probably a day 2 guy. So moving on. Who have we got left?
Shackham.
Aha.
Shackham Griffin. Alex, when you watched him, what'd you see?
So yeah, I've only watched one game of him, so I still need... I've watched him live, of course, and only just one game in depth, but he is somebody who, of course, if you're not aware, he has one hand. That's kind of the...
What?
That's the big thing of him.
What?
That's what sources are telling me. One hand.
What a scandal.
I might be an unofficial owner of the team, too. Oh, wait, sorry. But he is a guy who plays he's a really fun player to watch at the end of the day. He moves freely in coverage. He puts himself all over the place. He's an outside guy. I think he's probably a will. And he's not... you don't want him taking on too many core run responsibilities. You just want him to kind of run around and wreak havoc, which includes in coverage, where I think he's really good. One of the better people in this class in both man and zone. He's athletic. And he to his credit, he's figured out how to play with one hand, and I think our way of viewing that is because we assume that it can't be done, and that since we don't know how to, or I suppose how we haven't seen a linebacker and a football player really excel with that, we assume it's impossible, but he's come this far figuring out how to make it work, and he's made it work for him. And so I think it's totally fair to assume that he can figure it out on the NFL level. Not to say it's not going to hold him back a little, which I think it's fair to say it will, but I think he's really good in a lot of areas, and that makes him certainly. I think day 3 is a little ridiculous for him. He's better than that. I don't care if he's got one hand. He's a really good football player. So you can't dismiss it, but I don't think it should be the end-all, be-all.
I like it.
At a position like linebacker, I wouldn't think that at his position it would be the hugest concern unless you saw him sliding off a lot of tackles, I guess. But
right. And you're not going to get any interceptions with him, but who cares?
He's got
you might get it.
He's got some.
Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not asking him to play receiver. That might be a little
much.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think you don't really make tackles with your fingertips for the most part. You put your shoulder and you wrap your arms around a guy. So
he has.
It's not that wouldn't be enough. Three picks. And how many years of starting how old is he?
I think he's 22.
Okay.
He's a little older.
That makes him old for this class. Yeah.
He's a redshirt senior.
Oh really? Yeah, that makes him way old for this class. Okay. Yeah, if he had both hands, Alex, where would you put him?
First round.
Him versus Rashawn would be interesting. I think they would be. I think it's Roquan tier. For me, it's Roquan tier, Vander Esch tier, and then I think it'd be Evans and Griffin.
Okay, that's good because Evans was one of the best players that I watched at linebacker, so I was kind of upset when you guys were railing on him so hard. But
to be clear, railing for I said he was a day 2 guy or a round 2 guy yesterday. That might be a little too harsh. I could see taking him at the end of round 1. I just don't think, as much as I love linebackers, I don't think they're that. They are. Yeah, they're not that. They're not a position that you feel totally comfortable taking round 1, unless they're guys like Reuben Foster or like Roquan Smith. But if in terms of talent, I think he's definitely at the end of round 1 isn't a stretch at all.
Yeah, and that arbitrary, when we just organically shift from using the scale of rounds as a term we would use for actual position of drafting to just like an A or a B or a C grade on a player.
Right.
It's yeah. So.
Okay. We are approaching an hour, and I don't want to go much longer than an hour. Got 2 questions from the chat for those watching us live on YouTube. Darren, your last name is a nightmare, and I am not going to try and pronounce it. So he says, does Hooker not play center field anymore in the new scheme? And actually, he will play more center field in this scheme than he would have then in Pagano's scheme, because we are moving to a cover 3 defense, and that middle of the field is entirely his. Like that back half free safety role. That think Earl Thomas.
Yeah, the Colts last year used him as a center field a lot because they play a lot of cover 1, but they also they liked interchanging their safeties and moving them all around. They had a lot of 2 deep looks. They even had some Hooker and man-to-man coverage, which really isn't his game. Right. So, you're going to get certainly a lot of center field.
Next question comes from Jake Campbell. I know it's not draft-related, but what do we think of Anthony Hitchens? I say he's better than any linebacker that we probably have in our thing right now. He's comfortable in Eberflus's style. We did this with DeQuell, or not DeQuell. Who was the linebacker that they brought over? I don't know. I can't even remember anymore. There's so many awful ones. But anyways, it's one of those things where you bring the new coaches, old players in, even as a stopgap because they know the players. I'm all in. Linebackers in free agency are cheap, $6 million, $7 million a year. Bring it on.
Yeah,
he can play Will and Mike in the Eberflus defense. He's got experience playing both, so
I'm not going to pretend to have watched Anthony
yeah,
Hitchens'
me neither.
depth over the past 3 years, but I know he's a starting level player on an okay defense and is familiar with the scheme. So for a short-term contract, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like a 3-year, $20 million deal, something like that. That's perfect.
Something we'll talk about when we get closer to free agency is that from what I've seen, linebackers are the devaluing of linebackers as the NFL gets more space oriented and more speed oriented has been interesting in terms of just their contracts they've been getting, because there's been a lot of like 1 year pretty low salary deals, and I wonder if Hitchens falls more into that category.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, guys, we have hit an hour. Let's talk. Got any other final thoughts before we sign off here for the evening?
It's a really good class of linebackers. I think when it comes to the Colts, the Roquan thing probably isn't going to happen unless it's a trade down to like 7 or 6 with the Jets or Broncos, and that happens, which is a shame because I'd love to see him on the team. But he's somebody you can just appreciate wherever he goes. And then day 2, I think, is going to offer a lot of exciting possibilities. We're going to keep watching. We're going to learn some of these later guys. But I think that if they're going to... We've been waiting for an inside linebacker draft pick for a while, and top of round 2 seems to be like a great place to target one.
Man, don't forget poor man Stephon Anthony Amarlo Herrera from the 2014 or 15 draft.
Poor man Stephon Anthony, wow.
Which is... That's
pretty bad.
That's a beggar, man. Poor man Stephon Anthony's a beggar. But again, he had the whole Eric Stoner hype. Linebacker 42, whatever. Anyways, for that, we are done with tonight's episode of the Colts Bros podcast. Next week is the Combine. Is the Combine start this weekend or next weekend?
It's got to be next weekend, I think.
Okay. We might talk about it. We'll be back sometime in the future, hopefully sooner than later. We'll see you all next time.